Hail, hail, hail this land of glory. We the Ambazonians pledge our loyalty. Praise the Son, our Savior, who granted us our freedom. Allegiance to the heroes who won the land with their blood. Glory to glory, we rise and never to fall. Here in a nation flowing with milk and honey. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making our nation a joy forevermore. Amazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our needs, and your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of this nation. Amazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our needs, and your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God be the watchman of his nation.
Thank you. So, for those of you who missed a really spirited session yesterday, before I pass it over to my co-moderator today, I'd like to run down what we have to accomplish today and do so so that those who have traveled from far might be able to make their flights. So we will be beginning today's session with, if you don't have the program in front of you, with resolving the Southern Cameroonians' question, an autopsy of the strategy. And this session will be led by Mr. Mbah Akuro. Following that, we plan on having a session on humanitarian issues in the crisis and a call for action. This is very near and dear to my heart, and I believe to most of you in attendance. We will have further discussions about the fate of the internally displaced and what is perhaps one of the greatest growing disasters of this conflict, and discussions around that. We'll have another session on the war in Southern Cameroon and a path to sustainable peace, and we'll be looking for your contributions in this session, as with the other sessions.
Thank you. Good morning once again. I think as you must have heard from our national anthem, the first thing that you would notice is our belief in God. And so before we proceed, we want to call on him to intercede on our behalf.
Amen. The word of God says, unless the Lord builds the house, the builder labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. Can we rise as we pray this morning? Father, we come to you this day in the name of Jesus. Holy Spirit of God, we commit our life into your own hands. Lord, we call upon you, Abba Father. Have your way in this conference. Lord, you know the purpose for which we, your own children, are gathered here. Holy Spirit of God, bless us, empower us with divine wisdom, divine direction. Honor our steps according to your plan for Amberland, in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Lord, I pray for all the frontline leaders, Father Lord, that you give them wisdom. Honor their steps, Lord. Bring peace and among the Lord. Let there be unity in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Now this moment, we as your own children want to pray for our brothers, our parents back in Amberland. Father, Lord, that you will bless them. Lord, that you will protect them from the hands of the oppressors. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ. We come against every evil plan of the devil, against this conference. All those that are thinking evil about the Amberland, Father, let their plan be destroyed from this moment in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Those who are looking at this conference and think it's like the other ones, Father, I want to stand as your own servant and tell them, no, that is not their plan for us. Holy Spirit, this moment, we as your own children, we cry for you. We cry for you, our Father. Have your way. Have your way, Lord. Glorify yourself among your people. Let your light shine among your people, that our life will not be the same. Our nation will not be the same. For now is the time. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'm sorry, I was about to preach.
Hallelujah. All right, Pastor.
Now, at the conference yesterday, there was a group called Scope, and they had approached me as one of the moderators to ask for a 10-minute presentation, and the groups that, the frontline groups, we had told them that presentation had already passed, and we said, okay, we were going to look at it and putting them on the agenda today. But if you notice during the personal story, one of them took the microphone and they talked for about 5 or 7 minutes. And in this period of it is our conference, we let them talk. But I think there was some posting on social media that was brought to my attention today. And I strongly, strongly want to condemn that. You cannot post a convention and talk about how everybody here in summary is some kind of a federalist, and that until Scope came in to actually, that there was a hidden agenda to this meeting, and Scope came in to then barge in, and we were actually not wanting to give them a platform, and it was not until they got a platform that they refocused the conference. I mean, that is a nutshell my understanding of what they wrote. If somebody has a that write-up, and they wanted to read it or circulate it to everybody, they should do so. I have always said, Southern Cameroons is not a monolith. The one good thing, the best thing I have known in America is the First Amendment. And the problem with the First Amendment is that people are going to have voices. But the challenges with the First Amendment is also that those voices are not all going to always be reasonable. And as we're going to leave this hall, there will be people who will tell you that this conference held on Thursday. Some people will tell you that this conference never held. And some people will tell you that the people who actually held this conference were all Francophones. And some will tell you that there was a minister from La République who joined in this conference. Gentlemen and women, please, let us be who we are. You must, if you don't want to actually get scarred, don't go to battle. We are at war, and the war is the war of freedom, and we will get there. And so don't take that as a deterrent, and everybody, our tent is big, and everybody has a seat at this tent. Come here, let us talk, but please don't distort the view of the general population as we lead into the sessions. Please, we'll call my co-MC to lead the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. I would just add by saying that let's go native. Get off Facebook, get off WhatsApp, quit being a reporter. If you must, do something constructive. Google, Facebook, Lyft, Uber are not great because they spend their time with Mark Zuckerberg. They are great because of the number of people. You are going to make this happen. So we are really excited to hear about the next speakers. And this session, I'm really looking forward to it. Resolving the Southern Cameroon, I believe it's a one Cameroon, not Cameroon, question. Autopsy. Really curious. Mr. John Mbah Akuro, please make him feel welcome.
Thank you very much. The subject matter of this presentation is actually the Southern Cameroon's question, Cameroon government's response to the Southern Cameroon's question from the first manifestation in 1963 to date. Abstract. This paper is a cold and very detailed analysis on how the annexationist government of the Republic of Cameroon has handled the genuine concerns of political exclusion, socio-economic marginalization, and fears of identity erosion expressed by the people of Southern Cameroon from 1963. That's only 3 years after the birth of a federation that was supposed to keep each party's people happy and their colonial heritage protected at all times to present date. It traces successive efforts made by the people of Southern Cameroon over the years to render the union workable, and it demonstrates as well how each time the response from Yaoundé has been denial, excessive and bloody brutality, humiliation, and dehumanization. Finally, the paper marks how the hardline approach generally adopted by Yaoundé has resulted today to the overwhelming desire and the decision by the traumatized Southern Cameroonians to either achieve outright self-determination or all die fighting. Keywords: denial, brutality, dehumanization, traumatized, and self-determination. The wars of the people of Southern Cameroon in the union with the Republic of Cameroon began exactly 20 days, and this is shocking, just 20 days after reunification, and that was to be a signal for rougher days ahead. On the 20th of October 1961, President Ahidjo signed a decree reorganizing the federal territory into 6 administrative regions, including West Cameroon, and appointed a federal inspector for each region who was to report to the federal president. That provoked discontent among Southern Cameroonians because West Cameroon could not at the same time be a federated state according to the constitution and an administrative region by decree. Was the federal inspector had more power than the elected prime minister of West Cameroon, and he showed it daily by humiliating members of the federated government and parliament with impunity. In 1962, Ahidjo signed several orders limiting public freedoms, with the war against the UPC still raging on at its peak in East Cameroon. The arbitrary arrest and detention of opponents and trade unionists accused of subversion became common. Other measures, such as the introduction of driving on the right-hand side of the road, the imposition of the metric system, and the CFA franc as currency, took place around the same period. The change in currency entailed a reduction in the purchasing power of Southern Cameroonians by at least 10%. Southern Cameroon's multimillionaires fell from grace to grass within the twinkle of an eye by that single decision. Ahidjo also demanded that West Cameroon cut all links with the United Kingdom, with the result that it lost several export duty advantages afforded to Commonwealth countries. The federated states did not have financial autonomy and depended on grants from the federal state. Understanding where the real power was located, the Southern Cameroon's political elite competed for positions in the federal government, spending more time trying to please President Ahidjo than defending the interests of the people of the Southern Cameroons. That is how, in the Union, the interests of the people of Southern Cameroons began eroding. Ahidjo took advantage and manipulated the rivalries among the elites and the ethnic and cultural divisions between grassfields in the north, which had cultural and linguistic links with the Bamenikes of the west in Francophone Cameroon, and the Sawa in the south, who had cultural and linguistic links with the Francophones of the coast. The result was political chaos in West Cameroon. It included a split between Foncha Muna, who left the Cameroon National Democratic Party in 1965 to form the Cameroon United Congress, and it dissolved into Aidjo's unique party, the Cameroon National Union, ending an era of multi-party democracy. This was the start of several years of complaints and repression until the tipping point was attained on the 17th of January 2017 with the banning of the Cameroon Anglophone Civil Society Consortium, the CASC, and the Southern Cameroon's National Council, the SCNC, the suppression of internet signals all over Southern Cameroons, the arrest of leaders of the consortium, and the launch of a manhunt of all other officials of both organizations. The birth of the era of protests. It was also in 1972 that Southern Cameroonians really began to challenge their marginalization. At the CNU National Congress in 1972, late Professor Bernard Fundler publicly criticized the creation of the Unitary Republic. Other prominent Southern Cameroonians such as Albert Mukong, Gorgie Dinka were also fiercely opposed. Foncha and Joa wrote privately to Aidjo and expressed their opposition in the official media. Unification thus left Southern Cameroonians with a sense that their territory was in economic decline. It entailed the centralization and or dismantling of their economic structures, such as the West Cameroon Marketing Board, the Cameroon Bank, Powercam, as well as the abandonment of several projects, including the Port of Victoria, now known as Limbe, and airports at Bamenda, Tiko, Bali, and Mamfe, with investments in the Francophone part of the country going on, winning out with no stress and no stoppage. Despite numerous peaceful means engaged to have these wrongs reversed, nothing has ever been done in those areas to date. When Mr. Zacchaeus Foronjinda, in his capacity as managing director of the National Shipyard Company, commonly known in Cameroon as Chantier Naval, tried to revive the Victoria Deep Seaport project in 2005, he was brutally halted with charges of embezzlement of public funds, was arrested, detained, and was handed a lifetime jail term. Among all those charged with embezzlement in Cameroon, that was the only person who ended with a lifetime jail term. Once he was out of the way, the project was carried to Kribi in the south region of the Republic of Cameroon. To put the icing on the cake, the central government enacted a taxation policy that forces all big companies located in southern Cameroon to pay their taxes exclusively either in Douala or in Yaoundé, completely impoverishing the local councils and increasing the level of dependence on Yaoundé. The cat and mouse game gains speed of time. So with the dissolution of all political parties across the Federal Republic of Cameroon into President Aidjo's Union Nationale Camerounaise, the CNU, the death of the federal system, whose substance was already fully drained, was only a matter of time. And it came to pass that in 1972, an illegal referendum was organized, involving even citizens of French-speaking Cameroon who never voted in 1961 to accelerate the assimilation of the peoples of the southern Cameroons. There was no sensitization, and no one was allowed to hold campaign rallies to educate the people on the choices to be made. And this ensured that the results were known in advance. The choice was between oui and yes, simply a choice between yes and yes. Paul Biya put the final nail on the coffin in January 1984 when he signed a decree changing the name of the country from the United Republic of Cameroon, that was erected in 1972, to the Republic of Cameroon, a country that was already in existence in 1960. This is what became known as the Restoration Law. It marked the official secession by the Republic of Cameroon from the supposed union, sealed in 1961. And it also marked the beginning of the rape or the annexation of the southern Cameroons. In the early 1990s, the wind of democracy that blew across sub-Saharan Africa opened a window that many thought could help to right some of the wrongs accumulated over time. But it was, of course, a pipe dream. The Social Democratic Front, SDF party, with a huge following in southern Cameroon and nationwide, was quickly labeled an Anglophone party. And in successive years, all was done to deny it a national character and by that, any chance of ever acceding to power. Its chairman, Nick John Frundi, was robbed of his victory at the 1992 presidential election, mainly because the French could not accept a foreigner, quote, as president of their overseas territory. The SDF won several councils and parliamentary seats in the then Central Province in 1997, but the results were all reversed in favor of the CPDM because, as they put it, it would be shameful to have an Anglophone party controlling councils in the national capital. These steps continued closing chances of ever securing any meaningful changes to the Southern Cameroon's case through the ballot box as exclusion deepened. In 1993, a tripartite conference was summoned to examine the teething problems of the country. Here, the Southern Cameroon's delegation suggested a return to the two states federation as existed in 1961 as a palliative to the numerous problems their people were facing in the Union. In reaction, the ruling Beti clan rather threatened to ask for a Beti state, constituting the center, the south, and the east regions of La République du Cameroon, if Southern Cameroonians continued to talk about federalism. This was a clear sign that federalism would never again be on the table as far as La République du Cameroon is concerned. The failure of the tripartite conference to discuss a lasting solution pushed Southern Cameroonians, who had previously held the conference in January 1993 in Boya, adopt the All Anglophone Conference, AAC, to summon another conference in 1994. At the AAC2, the narrative changed. The people decided a return to the roots by refusing and rejecting the dubious appellation Anglophones. This is how the Southern Cameroon's National Council, the SCNC, was born, with a mandate to either force a return to the two-state federation or ignite the independence restoration quest after a reasonable time frame. The response from Yaoundé was one of refusal to recognize the SCNC, which has been outlawed several times, and preferred to tag adherents as secessionists who rather deserved crackdowns and not consideration. Even as the SCNC was settling down, the erosion of the Anglo-Saxon system of education Southern Cameroonians inherited from British colonial rule was gaining speed. At this point, the Teachers Association of Cameroon, TAC, led by Andrew Azonwara, launched a campaign to obtain an independent examination board to run Southern Cameroon's examinations. The response of the government was first a denial of the existence of any problems with the system, as it were. The teachers carried out countless demonstrations supported by parents and other sections of the Southern Cameroon's public. At one of the demonstrations in the heart of Yaoundé, security forces exerted excessive force and brutality on the protesters, pouring truckloads of water on peaceful demonstrators. In the process, some people lost limbs and others their sight permanently. In the end, a GC board was created. But before that, a baccalaureate board was handed to Francophones who never even knew what it was all about. They never asked for it. The ploy was to water down the influence of the GCE board and to create room for future calls for harmonization of the two boards. And we have already seen that happen. The move was a programmed death of the GCE board that was only granted to calm down tensions. The GCE board has now been nationalized, measures taken to ensure that most of its administrators would be people from La République du Cameroon. That happened only a few weeks ago. Even as this armed conflict is raging on, they continue relentlessly to erode our system. Calls for the creation of an Anglo-Saxon style university in Boya were granted in 1993. And as usual, 5 other universities were created for people who never asked for anything. But as the years went by, a programmed takeover was ignited, and plans to downgrade the quality of education handed down there were immediately hatched, even as Francophones were given an edge in acceptance into the university on basis of admissibility conditions. It is a practice there to reject Southern Cameroonians' entry applications because they did not make English, the English paper, at the GCE ordinary level examination, despite learning English all their lives, but accepting Francophone students who passed a 6-month crash course in English. Lately, the little margin of independence the university enjoyed has been swept aside, with all powers of core decisions now vested on the President of the Republic of Cameroon. In 1995, the government felt pressured by a Bamenda High Court judgment with regards to the 1984 presidential decree that reinstated the Republic of Cameroon, withdrawing it from the supposed Union of 1961 and beginning the recolonization of southern Cameroons. The 1992 judgment took note of the restoration decree of 1984 and granted Fon Gojidinka's prayer to create the Republic of Ambazonian as a successor state of the former British southern Cameroons. To circumvent criticism that the people ought to have been consulted, in the popular vote for such an important decision, government sent a bill to Parliament to ratify the change of the name of the country from the United Republic of Cameroon to the Republic of Cameroon. That was about 11 years after the decree had been signed and the name of the country effectively changed. That is when it was going to Parliament for ratification. Despite putting up a robust fight to protect the future of the deceased union, albeit even symbolically by keeping the suffix united in the country's name and returning the second star to the national flag, the 35 Southern Cameroon's members of parliament, many of the CPDM and NUDP parties, saw their votes drowned by the overwhelming majority of MPs from La République du Cameroun, and they lost. The tipping point. The early years of the return by Cameroon to multi-party politics left a lot of scars on southern Cameroonians, with a lot of derogatory names tacked on the people, such as les ennemis dans la maison, translated enemies within, Anglophones, Biafrans, and the likes. But none of the attacks provoked the kind of reactions that generally followed each attempt to wipe out the Anglo-Saxon subsystem of education in the name of harmonization. The Cameroon Teachers Trade Union, CATU, initiated and executed several strike actions, forcing the government to constantly draw back a little, although generally leaving room to realize its dream. A forceful call to action on the need to promote technical education in southern Cameroons, but by creating a higher institution to train Anglo-Saxon teachers for that sector, resulted in the creation of the Higher Technical Teachers Training College, dubbed NSET Bambili, in 2010. Before then, southern Cameroon students taking technical education received their lectures mainly from Francophone teachers who taught them in some language midway between French, English, and sometimes their native vernacular. However, the gains supposedly made with the creation of NSET Bambili were quickly lost, as almost the entire administration was handed over to Francophones. And the result was that Southern Cameroons hosted the school, but it trained mostly Francophones, and the cycle continued. This development left the education sector as an active volcano that will erupt into a joint action with common law lawyers. When the wind of harmonization hit the legal system, lawyers resisted vigorously, and as usual, the government's response was denial, excessive use of force on lawyers' peaceful protests on the streets of Buea, threats, and empty promises. We saw 5 government ministers hold a press conference each to deny the existence of any such thing as a Southern Cameroon's problem, and defined Anglophone to mean anyone who ever studied the Anglo-Saxon system of education, and told us how they had a lot of Anglophones in their homes because their children were taking our Anglo-Saxon system of education. That was the dubiousness that has continued with the appellation Anglophone, and which unfortunately the international community had adopted. We are not Anglophones. I am not an Anglophone. I am a Southern Cameroonian. Anglophone is a totally different definition, not close at all. When the lawyers and teachers made their plight a community problem, through the creation of the Cameroon Anglophone Civil Society Consortium, and listing every other Southern Cameroonian, the government adopted the stick and carrot approach. It opened negotiations with the leaders of the consortium, made a lot of flamboyant promises, but when the people insisted on seeing concrete actions as a show of goodwill before suspending the strike actions, the result was the banning of the consortium and the Southern Cameroon's National Council, the SCNC, the suppression of internet signals in all of Southern Cameroons, the arrest of the consortium leaders, among them Dr. Fontaine here, and the launch of a manhunt for all stakeholders involved in the uprising and the excessive militarization of Southern Cameroons. Despite all this, the situation got worse. When they realized that things were getting completely out of hands, the government decided for the first time to acknowledge the existence of a Southern Cameroon's problem. It was amazing then, because I recall that I was still at CITV and we had a beautiful moment playing the earlier clips of total denial and the new clips of total acceptance. What a drama. When the lawyers and teachers, the Yaoundé authorities then took several measures from March 2017 to try and end the crisis. They created a National Commission for Bilingualism and Multiculturalism, created new benches for common law at the Supreme Court and new departments at the National School of Administration and Magistracy, recruited magistrates of Southern Cameroon's origin, and 1,000 bilingual teachers, whoever bilingual teachers are, and turned the internet back on after a 92-day cut. But all these measures were cosmetic because the existence of these commissions and the recruitments did not address the root causes of the crisis in any way. And most of the measures were just too little, and especially too late. And unsurprisingly, of the 1,000 bilingual teachers recruited as a measure to address the Southern Cameroon's question, to close the deficiency of Anglo-Saxon teachers in the technical education subsystem, less than 100 of them were of Southern Cameroon's origins. That's amazing. Because we cried out that the margin is too much. We don't have enough teachers to handle our technical education subsector. They say, okay, we are going to recruit 1,000 to address that problem. But eventually, when the recruitment takes place, there's a 100 are from Southern Cameroons. All the rest are from the Republic of Cameroon because this recruitment into the public service. That was an address to a problem. The true intentions of Yaoundé are being shown, even as the crisis rages on. The assimilation project is continuing unperturbed. As we speak, a bill is on its way to Parliament, now, in Yaoundé, to introduce the civil law practice in Southern Cameroons, undermining the common law system inherited from British colonial rule. And this was a key factor in the conflict that is going on right now. So this will add to the ongoing targeted killings, the burning of villages and hospitals, arbitrary arrests of Southern Cameroon citizens and their deportation to detention centers across the Republic of Cameroon, rampant kidnappings for ransom, blackmail, extortion, and abuses of all kinds. That is the response the government of the Republic of Cameroon has to the Southern Cameroon questions. Two peoples, two nations, two destinies. Events in the Cameroons lately have demonstrated beyond reasonable doubts that these are two peoples with two different destinies that will never really make it together in whatsoever form of union. Evidence of this lies in the total indifference shown by people across the River Mungo in the face of the ongoing carnage being visited on people they refer to as their brethren. In some cases, outright calls have been made for the complete annihilation of Southern Cameroonians. While Jacques Zay and Ernest Obama, journalists at Vision Catch Television in Yaoundé, see Southern Cameroonians only as roaches and cockroaches deserving to be wiped out, politician Bandakani expresses disappointment with the government of the Republic of Cameroon for not using military techniques and weaponry that should completely delete every single one of the Southern Cameroonians on their territory from the surface of the earth. These utterances have never been condemned. But southern Cameroonians were shot, killed, tortured, humiliated, and traumatized beyond proportions for merely talking about the need to return to a federal system of governance. As if that was not enough, the Francophone-dominated parliament has outlawed any mention of the Southern Cameroon question and the ongoing genocide in its premises. Each time opposition deputies mentioned the carnage and hardship on Southern Cameroonians, they were either hushed down or abandoned on the floor by those of the ruling CPDM party. Also, the action of the government when a few houses were burned down in Banguren, a village in the Noon division of the West region of La République du Cameroon, could not have translated this message of two peoples, two nations, two destinies even better. Countless government officials visited with relief assistance, financial and material aid to reconstruct. No such action has been seen in Southern Cameroon, where over 400 villages and counting, are being burnt and reduced to ashes completely, and in some with human beings alone. On the contrary, soldiers have been seen chasing internally displaced persons right into the forest and killing them with impunity. Last but not least, recent street demonstrations organized by the opposition MRC party of Maurice Kamto in the streets of Yaoundé and Douala saw soldiers and police firing at protesters only on regions of their bodies that could incapacitate them just temporarily. In Southern Cameroon, all such protests have resulted to deaths, right from May 6, 1990, during the launch of the SDL party in Bamenda, to present date. While Mancho Bibixi has been handed a 13-year jail term for leading a social protest that demanded better living conditions, protesters who threw stones at the police for the same reasons at the Yaoundé Central Market in December 2018 all went home with neither questioning nor even a scratch on their bodies. NBIT. In 1961, as world powers discussing the need to end colonial rule in most African countries, the fate of the people of Southern Cameroon was hanging in the balance. But after several consultations and series of votes at the United Nations, the then US ambassador to the United Nations, Zablowski, warned. The United States of America had voted for Resolution 1350, sub 13, and still finds its provisions satisfactory. The USA congratulates the people of the Southern Cameroons for their accession to autodetermination, as it constitutes the will of the population who want to run its affairs democratically. The government and the opposition parties of the Southern Cameroons, unfortunately, have not come to an agreement. However, there is no reason to deny the population of the Southern Cameroons a break. The results of a hurried choice imposed on the population of the Trust Territory would be catastrophic for their political future. That was 1951. This statement is just as true today as it was in 1961. At that time, the Western powers led by Britain denied Southern Cameroon's outright independence on grounds that the territory would not have enough resources to self-sustain. Today, the same Western powers have been seen conspiring to deny Southern Cameroonian self-determination again, but this time on grounds that letting Southern Cameroons go would render the neighboring La République du Cameroon totally impoverished, because Southern Cameroon holds all by itself about 60% of the GDP in the current field union. What a time. This is why the people of Southern Cameroon must come to the quick realization of the undeniable fact that the ongoing conflict is an existential matter. The only way forward in these circumstances is for the people to bond together, fight together, and either die or win together. No one else can understand and appreciate the plight of the people better than themselves. Any form of further association with the Republic of Cameroon will be tantamount to shifting the carnage to another generation. This will be an inexcusable error and a betrayal, with the thousands of Southern Cameroonians paying the ultimate price in the hope that we secure a better future for our people.